Pro Football Playbook, presented by the Pigskin Podcast Network. Your source for team news, draft needs, player profiles and rankings, full Senior Bowl, Combine, and NFL draft coverage. News, analysis, discussion. It's in the playbook. Now, here is your host, sports journalist Bill Alvstad, and featured analyst Keith Myers. Hey, welcome into the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. Keith, welcome into the show. We're talking team roster evaluations for the entire league. We're starting alphabetically. Arizona Cardinals is first on the clock. Welcome in, man.
Yeah, it's weird thinking about this alphabetically rather than
I don't even know why we tried to do that.
Going by division, but I think it's because we always go by division with all the other stuff, and so it's like, and then it just feels like we're repeating ourselves, and coming through it at it from a different, in a different order, kind of changes how we're doing things. But we're starting with Arizona, and Arizona is an interesting team because, honestly, does anybody know what's going on with Kyler Murray and the organization?
Yeah, I live here in Phoenix, and I can tell you firsthand, no. No, we don't. I assume that he comes in. He's under contract. Obviously, he's going to lose a ton of money if he doesn't. I know he wants the deal. He's trying to put pressure. I think his agent probably got over his skis a little bit on the demand side of this situation, and it kind of all comes back. I think the trade for Marquise Brown right before the draft kind of helped Kyler Murray a lot. It gave him a steady weapon that he's very familiar with, former college teammate, for goodness sake. And so I do think that helps. Extending Zach Ertz was a great thing. And so there's a good team around him. I think we saw them implode last year. Are they better this year? Let's find out. Let's talk about it.
Spoiler, they're not. So
right off the top. Okay, we're at 148. You can go ahead and just shut it off now. We'll talk about this. Come back in about 15 minutes. We'll talk about Atlanta.
Because let's go through all of it, because a lot of it comes down to me, and then you may not share this opinion, but for me, it comes down to where are they better. And I like Marquise Brown. I think that was a good ad for them, but they lost DeAndre Hopkins to suspension, and that kills them. And he is, even with Marquise Brown, Hopkins would be their best receiver. So now you're looking at an ancient AJ Green, who last year was kind of a shell of his former self, as the number 2, Rondale Morris 3, because they lost their top 2 receivers from last year, and Hopkins and Christian Kirk, they're both gone.
Yeah, that hurts.
And they replaced them with Marquise Brown, and
a rookie. They got a rookie tight end and Trey McBride, one of the best pass catching tight ends in the draft, but he's a rookie.
He's a rookie and he's a tight end.
Yeah.
So you've got Zach Ertz and Trey McBride and Max Williams at tight end. That's a great position group. It's arguably their best position room on this roster, but it's still tight end. It's not a high value position. DJ Humphries, Justin Pugh, Rodney Hudson, Will Hernandez, Kelvin Beachum. That's the offensive line. Does that scare anybody?
It seems, Keith, like this franchise is wandering around in circles. And I don't know how else to say it. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. We're just swapping players. There's no real improvement in any one position group that kind of gets them over the edge. You mentioned the offensive line. I think it's marginal. I think it's like a top 20 offensive line. It's not worse. It's not better. It's just kind of is.
Yeah.
I like Rondale Moore, Andy Isabella. I like Trey McBride. I like Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, obviously, James Conner out of the backfield. It's a decent offense. This is a team that gives trouble to certain defenses and will continue to do so. This is a team that came out and won a lot of games last year in the first half of the season. And then the wheels started to come off, obviously. But They do have some ability. And then on the defensive side, I do like their defense. I mean,
I like parts of their defense.
I like parts of their defense. Yeah, which parts don't you like? They did get Marco Wilson. They shipped out a fourth round pick in a trade to get Marco Wilson. But
so if we just stick to the offense for just a sec, this offense is one that you have to hope that what we saw in the beginning of the last 2 years especially, what we saw in the first half of those two seasons is what we see all year, because that's the only way to get improvement. This roster is not better, especially on offense. It's not better than it was last year. If anything, it's slightly worse because of the loss of the receivers. And so you're hoping the only improvement is going to be, it's got to come from coaching, and that they're not going to take the nosedive after.
All right. Let me have it, Keith. Let me have it.
What that
they're not going to improve on the coaching
I don't think
side, are
because,
they?
No, because okay,
They
that's
just
my
extended Cliff Kingsbury and their GM as well.
God, which is stupid. Why would you extend Kingsbury?
Yeah.
Is he the worst head coach in the NFL?
After that drop, after the midseason drop and then the loss in the playoffs, I just don't know. I mean, that loss to Seattle at the end of the year was kind of the exclamation point on the entire thing.
Yeah. I mean, the Seahawks weren't good last year. They were genuinely bad. They started a rebuild after that. They did
encountered Russell Wilson's best game of the year and Rashad Penny's best game of the year. That's kind of what happened to them. But
yeah,
other than that, I mean, what do you see on their defense that's holding them back?
Well, they lost their best defensive player.
Chandler Jones, big hit.
Yeah. And
big hit. But he was oft injured in the last couple of seasons.
He's still their best defensive player, and there's no replacement. JJ Watt is a great name and a former defensive player of the year, but when was the last time he was healthy through most of the season?
Yeah, they basically replaced him with a rookie, Cameron Thomas, at outside linebacker. They've got Marcus Golden, Devin Kennard at outside linebacker that often rushes the passer. Monjai Sanders they picked up from Cincinnati in the draft, but those guys aren't going to do anything their first years. J.J. Watt's there, Zach Allen's on the other side.
I mean, those are nice. Those that on paper, that's a great set of defensive ends.
They just don't have a lot of depth.
Zach Allen and J.J. Watt. The problem is that neither of those guys will play 10 games in a year. Go look at the last few years. They don't. Neither of those guys are good for more than 10 games a year. They're going to struggle. There's not a lot of depth on this defense.
Yeah, they probably have the third best defense in the division, let alone in the league. I mean, I mentioned the offense as being, in the offensive line around 20. Mm-hmm. The offense itself is probably a top 10 offense. But now that you mentioned the situation at wide receiver, now that's a debate. You look at the defense is not intimidating really anybody. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if it's a top 10 defense. And so
losing Chandler Jones really hurts, because I get that he wasn't always healthy last year, but even when he was playing hurt and he was their best defensive player. He genuinely was. Now,
where do you see them emerging on out of training camp?
I like their secondary. And so as far as I think this is a team that needs depth. They need guys that can come in on defense and give their starters a break and step up if Watt gets hurt. And just they need depth, and I don't see it. And maybe they're going to surprise me, because we've got, guys here that are currently unheralded, mainly mm-hmm. because they haven't gotten a chance, and they'll come in and they'll surprise, because, given a chance, you're going to see, maybe Devin Kennard step up in a big way, or Majay Sanders come in and be a difference maker? I don't know. But right now, I see a team that's going to have injury problems because they've got a bunch of guys that always have injury problems. And once those guys get hurt, there's just no one behind them. But I do like their secondary. I want to throw that out there because Byron Murphy is, at corner, Jalen Thompson, Buda Baker, Marco Wilson. That's a good back end of the of a defense. It's just the front seven that I see talent, but no depth.
So, I'm just early prediction. I mean, do you see this team emerging out of the division into the playoffs in 2022?
I don't.
So you're falling back. They're falling back. They're going from 10. What were they? 10 or 11 wins to under. 500.
No, they won't be under 5. They'll be around 500. They'll be, let's say, 9-8.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I've got them. I think that they are a team that, if they jump out to that quick start the way they've had the last 2 seasons and win a bunch of games.
What do you attribute that to? Obviously the quick starts that, somewhat get attributed to the coaching. I mean, I know you don't like the coaching, but what else gets them out front like that with that quick start? The same thing that gets them to fall back. I mean, there's parts of it. Part of it is talent.
When you've got great top end talent, you're gonna win games early in the year. And if you don't have the depth to back it up, that as those guys start to get hurt, because the NFL is a war of attrition. And even
Kyler Murray missed games last year.
Yeah. So as these guys get hurt, you end up with you don't have anyone to replace them with. And so, I mean, every team is having injuries, but if your depth is poor, then the injuries affect you worse than everyone else. So that's part of it. And part of it is the coach.
The interesting thing about Arizona is for a long time there, they had some decent high draft picks come into the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, and the list goes to Buda Baker, and the list kind of goes on. They were able to get J.J. Watt in some trades. So they had some good favorable trades. They've done some good work on some drafts, and they just haven't been able to pull it all together.
Yeah,
and I think that's where you're pointing to the coaching.
Yeah, that is because there is talent here that they're not making the most of. And then there's also depth concerns. So the idea that they extended their coaching staff is insane to me. That I just look at this is one of the weaker coaching staffs in the entire NFL. And I get that you're going to look at Houston and Lovie Smith as going to be there, not just him personally, but the rest of that staff.
Actually, we'll talk about Houston later, but I actually like that move for them.
Yeah, but are they going to be? Is Lovie Smith got more? Does he get more than a year on this as their head coach, or do they move on so they can bring in some Josh McCown, who's the guy that they said they were? That was indicated that they wanted.
That franchise is definitely in a placeholder mode, Keith, and you know that because nobody wants to go there right now. But I mean, if he can get them in a position where it's attractive again, like with a number 1 overall pick and all that kind of stuff. But all right, so let's shift gears. Let's go to the Atlanta Falcons, which is, I think, a little bit more of an interesting team because it's ascending. I think we both agree that the Arizona Cardinals are in this, like I said, they're just in the circular firing zone thing going on. I don't know exactly where they're at. They're not ascending, but they're not falling off a cliff either. They're just right there.
They're right there. And this was a team Arizona was right there. At one point they were the number 1 seed, and whatever. And then they
MVP candidate at quarterback.
Yeah. Then they fell off a cliff. And ended up barely making the playoffs and got bounced early, the first game. So where are they? I don't see them ascending. I also don't see them descending too far. They just kind of are what they are. The Falcons are rebuilding. They're starting over.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that they had a horrible offseason, but they had a great draft.
I think they had a. I don't think it was a horrible offseason.
I do.
Because this is a team that was.
Give it like a D.
This is a team that was old.
So you like the Matt Ryan trade, and you like them getting a placeholder at quarterback.
Yeah.
That sort of strategy.
I mean,
to kind of get through this season.
This was a team that was old. It had some bad contracts it needed to get out from underneath, and it needed to start a rebuilding process that was going to take some time. And they got the process started. I mean, they started it really a year ago.
They put it off for like 2 or 3 years. I mean, this was like been building. You knew this was coming. How was it going to happen? This is now what has happened.
Yep. And so, a year ago, they got some draft picks for Nuke Hopkins. This year, it was Matt Ryan. They've turned that, that all that draft capital into a nice draft. I like, they got Drake London, who
I love that pick.
I know that like people are like, why was he the first wide receiver taken? Honestly, I think he's the guy. Like he's a guy that's fitting to be the first wide receiver taken. I like that pick. To go with him with Kyle Pitts at tight end, who's like just an athletic freak. Like just even amongst the great athletes of the NFL, Kyle Pitts makes most of them look, like me. Because he's that much of an athlete. Like him and Drake London, that's a great
and after that though it's really light. I mean, they have Auden Tate, but
I mean having Calvin Ridley get suspended certainly doesn't help anything.
Exactly.
So and there are some other problems. So there's problems up and down this roster, but they're bottoming out in a way that will allow them to start building. And I like some of the pieces that they've managed to acquire. They are guys that they can build around going forward.
Yes.
Even if they're not ready, even if nothing's been built yet.
Yeah. No, I love I love the London pick, but the Ebekete pick, the Arnold Ebekete pick at 38 overall, and then Troy followed that up with Troy Anderson. I think one of the best linebackers in the draft, end up being one of the best picks in the draft, I think, in the long run, just because of his work ethic and who he is as a player and how he fits in this scheme and so forth. I think he's going to be a tremendous. And then to get Desmond Ridder at 74 overall, where the value is right for him to come in and back up Marcus Mariota. Right away. I think that's a good thing. I think Marcus Mariota is a good teacher. He's a good person. He's a foundational piece as a backup in the NFL. Yeah. But he's going to get his shot this year to kind of carry the team a little bit and then mentor Desmond Ridder. And I think that's a good spot for Ridder to be in.
Yeah, and so Ridder went in the third round. And that's where he belonged. And everyone was talking about him maybe going in the first round. He doesn't belong in the first round, but people were talking about him going there because, well,
where else are the quarterbacks going to go?
Yeah, he was the first or second best quarterback in the draft, depending on who the evaluator is making those rankings. And so they're all, he's a first round pick. Well, no, he's a third round talent, but he has tools. There are things that you can like about him. He is a guy that reminds me, not in the type of player, but in the situation and the quality of player of Kirk Cousins when he came into the league. Because he came into the league as a fourth round pick, I believe, roughly in the same spot. Kind of the same idea, thought to be smart, NFL ready, but limited. And got his opportunity, made the most of it, ended up getting this crazy, freaky 100% guaranteed contract.
Yeah, he's made some of the most money for an NFL player in the last 10 years. I mean,
and he has got his chance and has done some good stuff with it. Desmond Ridder is a similar type player. Is he guy that you look at and you go, okay, this guy has potential to become, John Elway? No, you don't look at that. He may develop into something special, but he doesn't appear to be special at this point. But he could still be good. He may not be special, but he could still be good. So I like that pick, the value where they got him. And there's no pressure for him to come in and try and win right now, because that's why they went and signed Marcus Mariota, was to be that guy for a year.
Guess where our longtime nemesis friend at right tackle / guard ended up going this year?
Oh yes, I saw that name.
Yeah.
For those of you listening that don't know, I have this hate relationship with Jermaine Ifedi, who signed. He's probably going to be a backup, which is where he belongs, just on the bench. But
the right tackle. We're talking about a tackle. Offensive.
Yeah, we're talking about offensive tackle, and guy
former
who is
first round draft pick that washed out, and then he's a penalty machine, is what he is.
He's a mammoth human being that makes other offensive tackles look small. Like seriously, the guy is just huge, and so you'd think he'd be good, but he's a penalty machine. He can't pass block, and yeah.
And so now he's an afterthought.
Yeah, as a guy who studies offensive line and whatever, he is the worst thing about watching offensive linemen play. Like, I just hate the fact that I have to watch him occasionally. So that's where that came from.
Overall, this team has a few pieces to build around. I don't really care for their offensive line too much, but it is what it is. It's probably bottom third in the NFL, but it's something that they can build, in future drafts. They kind of focused on defense in this draft. They also got D'Angelo Malone, which I thought was a great pick, a little early at 82, but I think he was totally a riser. And my favorite pick for them actually is Tyler Algier, the running back out of BYU at 151 overall, which is a great value for him. He's like a road grader type runner for them. I think they got an interesting situation with Cordero Patterson. It's interesting. Like, what do you do with him? Is he a running back? Is he a wide receiver? If he's a wide receiver, he's a middling wide receiver that has trouble somehow getting open into space, even though he's a burner. But at running back, he's susceptible to injury because he's not huge.
He's not big. He runs too tall. He runs upright. But he's dynamic as a player. That's why he's probably
punt returner, kick returner, Pro Bowl deluxe.
He's probably the best kick returner in the NFL right now. He's just this crazy athlete that doesn't seem to fit in a position other than kick returner, but you want to use him in places. And running back's his best position, but you don't want him to get hurt and all of that. He's an interesting player, but I don't know if he's a good player.
Yeah. I think he's a good player. He's just a man without a position. I think you put like a tandem though of Damian Williams and Tyler Algier at running back. I think that improves the offense. It gives Marcus Mariota a chance to be successful, dinking and dunking around the field, and occasionally will take a shot. Cordero Patterson, I think, probably needs to line up a wide receiver for this team. Although I thought last year they used him about as effective as he's been since he's come into the league. I think that he still has tremendous value, obviously, as a kick returner. But you can get him the ball in space, and he becomes useful. And I think they can do that. Pick up 30, 35, 40 receptions for 500-600 yards, and that's kind of where he's at.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think you want to use him as a weapon. You line him up in the backfield and you rotate him out to get him the ball in space, or you line him up in the slot and bring him back and rotate him back into the backfield so he's running against a nickel defense type of thing. You can move him around and do stuff with him, but he isn't an every down back. He isn't. No. He's more of a wide receiver than a back in terms of his body type. So
turn your attention to the defense, Keith, and what do you think?
Well, I think the defense is going to be okay. I mean, anytime you got a guy like Grady Jarrett up front, you're starting with that's something you can build around. He's older. I'm kind of surprised he's still on the roster and that he wasn't moved for additional draft capital, but he didn't, and so he's there, and he makes guys around him better. Taquan Graham at nose tackle.
I like him.
He's a nose tackle. He's a big guy who eats space and blocks and all those things, and you probably won't hear his name most weekends, but he does his job. And his job is to just get in there and fight with the guards and centers and make them work hard to block him, so that way his linebackers can be clean. They've got some things that they can work around, like that. A Beckety at linebacker and pass rusher is going to be a nice piece for them. Lorenzo Carter on the other side has a chance to be a nice piece for them. They're not going to blow anyone away.
They don't have any depth. That's the issue with this team. Is I think that's why they're going to probably be at 5 wins this year. Is that they just don't have a lot of depth, and the talent up front is marginal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing to get excited about, obviously.
Well, I mean, it's not elite talent overall. That's what I'm saying. They've got some nice pieces, but they haven't built a roster around those nice pieces. They've just got the pieces, and they need another year or two of building. And sorry, I think Grady Jarrett's probably going to get moved, if not during the season, in a trade. Then it'll be this next off season, because they need to get younger and cheaper, and his contract is going to be one that they're going to want to move. And if they can do that, get some additional draft capital to help speed this rebuild up, they got to do it. So
their place kicker is Young Ho Koo, which is the best name in all of football. What else? Are we done?
Kind of. I mean, this is a team in transition.
Yeah,
they've decided that they needed to move on from Matt Ryan, and
that was the big thing,
and the Matt Ryan era players, not just him, but the other guys that were here while he was here. That when the last time that they were a playoff team and competitive, building around Matt Ryan and everyone, those guys are gone, like all of them. And so they're starting over, with the exception of Grady Jarrett. They're just not ready to compete yet. I don't want to be wrong. I would love for them to be good this year. I just don't.
I'd like to see Marcus Mariota get a shot. It's been a while for him. He's taken some lumps. He's been behind Derek Carr in at Oakland and then in Las Vegas, and it's just been a long haul for him. And to get another shot here legitimately, I don't see Desmond Ridder starting the season as the number one quarterback. Marcus Mariota is going to carry this team, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do with the stuff that he's got to work with. It's not a lot, but if he could put together a little something, it might give him a chance at a second contract. Is what I'd be looking for here.
Yeah, because he's a guy that had some promise early in his career, had some injuries, never really developed the way anyone expected him to, and then lost his job to Ryan Tannehill. And he didn't just lose his job to Ryan Tannehill because the team got tired of waiting for him. The team got better when Tannehill came in. I mean, they did. The offense just improved. And it's not like Tannehill's a super special quarterback either. So there's a lot of people who have written Mariota off as, God, that was just a terrible pick. And I don't know if that's true. The talent's there. He's smart. He's mobile. He's got a good arm. He's got an accurate arm. The talent's there, but a lot of things didn't work out. And I think the injury problems, he wanted to do things that his body couldn't do anymore. And I'm hoping that over the last 2 years, playing behind a pure pocket passer in Derek Carr has given him an opportunity to develop what he wants to do and his ability to take advantage of the skills that he still has, so that he can be successful here. I want him to be good.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll ever be good, but I want him to be good.
That's a great take, really. I mean, I think it's the time away that gives him the opportunity to see if he's any better. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at Alvstad NFL. The show's at PF_Playbook. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. Make sure you bump that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, guys.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. Follow Keith at Myers NFL. Phil is at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_Playbook. Listen and subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube and at our website, profootballplaybook.co.